Tom Pace here on the Talk of the Town, a special presidential segment with Buddy Roemer here in Bossier City, where they're welcoming him home today on this July 9th, 2011, with a special welcome home rally here at the Bossier Civic Center. It's been a number of years. If you look at Buddy, he's soon to be 68 on October the 4th. He's been in politics for nearly 4 decades. And ironically, now we are home to, I think it's about 5 riverboats. And on top of that, probably have Louisiana Downs over there. That's 20 years after you were the one that brought gambling and riverboat casinos to the state of Louisiana.
Yep. Unemployment rate was 12.8%, Tom. Not 9.2. Not 4% where it ought to be. 12.8%. And I decided that if Mississippi could do it, then we could do it better. And so we have. It was a tough decision. I got a lot of criticism for it. But how many people are working in this area now because we had 4 or 5 casino boats move in here? I made it possible, and for a Methodist boy, I had to take a deep swallow. But I looked at every state in America. They were allowing some form of gambling. And I decided that we didn't want to do a lottery and just give our money away. We wanted the jobs. So I decided to do riverboats here. I'm glad I did.
And yet we do have a lottery here that still brings in money. And do you find that okay with you?
No, I think a lottery is bad. It's a regressive tax. It takes money from poor people and gives nothing back. There's no entertainment value there at all. But I guess in a nation that has permanent unemployment like we do, people use that for some form of hope. I think we can do better. I think this country is better than where it is right now, where 1 out of 4 families in America have either lost their jobs or are underemployed or have quit looking. I think we can do better, and that's what this campaign's going to be about for me. I've never expressed the opinion that I'm Mr. Perfect. For years, I was a conservative Democrat, as you know. I'm the only governor in the history of this country that changed parties while he was in office. To me, it was real easy. Louisiana was corrupt, last in everything you want to measure, and it was a one-party state. I decided that, you know what we needed? We needed 2 parties for a debate, and maybe that conflict could give us better government. I like it.
And yet, in the midst of all that, you still lost in your bid for election back after you went out of office. Mike Foster, who turned a Republican, ironically, back in 1995.
Right. You know, each election kind of stands on the issues of that time, and Mike just did a great job in that campaign. I've always begged Mike to switch parties. He did right before that election, and it helped him a great deal, no doubt about it. And he turned out to be, I think, a very good governor.
Now, John Sununu, from the George Herbert Walker Bush era, was the one that kind of put the bug in your... Did he help you make that decision to cross party lines?
No. It was my own. Ronald Reagan was the first guy that talked to me about it when he was president of the United States. I was head of a group called the Boll Weevils, 43 conservative Democrats in the Congress, and we gave Reagan a majority in the House of Representatives on most of the big issues: tax reform, budget balancing, a strong national defense, which I've always believed in, and many Democrats do not. So we formed a coalition of about 40 Democrats, and we supported Reagan. And one day I'm in the White House and Reagan in the Oval Office, and it's just the president and me, and we're talking about an issue coming up where he wanted my help. And he said, you know, buddy, you ought to be a Republican. We need help in the South. I think we're going to grow in the South, but you ought to lead that. And I said, well, I'll think about it, Mr. President. And I changed parties about 4 years later.
Look back on your time. You started in 1973. You remember of the Constitutional Convention back then, and that was when the convention, you were elected to it in 72. So I said nearly 40 years in politics. Prior to that, had you been to Boys State? Had you been bitten by the political bug?
I've always enjoyed politics. I was in Boys State, as you probably know. I had majored in economics and government in college, so I had both a kind of a banking interest and a political interest. I ended up going to business school to pursue my banking interest, but I kept the political bug in the back of my mind. Part of it came from my mother and father, who were always active and involved and taught their family to do the same thing. But I like politics. But for the last 20 years, I've been out of politics. I've been building community banks, successful companies. I've been showing small businesses how to grow, how to make a profit, how to hire people. These are the exact skills that a president needs now, Tom. A president needs to show America how to compete, how to grow, how to build, how to balance the budget, how to revise the tax form. This is what I do. And I didn't think I'd ever be back in politics, but as I told you earlier, I became discouraged with what I saw in the office of president. Starting with Bill Clinton, who gave away the store on NAFTA with Mexico to no help to either country, who did away with banking regulation that had been there for 70 years, Glass-Steagall Act. He did away with it. And within 10 years, we had a total collapse of the banking system. And within 15 years, we're down to 8% of our country in manufacturing. 8%, Tom. We've got to take this back and do it right. So after being more and more discouraged, I decided this time to run and make it difficult. $100 is the maximum gift. No PAC money. No exceptions. Everything reported. Now, why would you do that, buddy?
It's going to be my question. People are saying, well, you're crazy.
There might be some Bossier High School in me. I admit that. But that's the way I've always run for office. Remember, I ran for Congress against an incumbent congressman, and they said, oh, he's got no chance to win. He won't take the big check. He won't take PAC money. Well, I won. Same thing running for governor against Edwin Edwards. He'd never been whipped before. He spent $15 million, Tom. We spent $1.6 million. Small contributions. It's the way to win. Because when you do, Tom, you're free to do what has to be done. You don't have to call GE like Obama does. Do you know that GE made $14.2 billion last year in profit, and they didn't pay 1 penny in federal income tax? And that's Obama's chief economic advisor, and they're the largest corporate givers to political campaigns in the country. Is that an accident, Tom? This country in Washington is bought and sold. Let me give you one number. 4 years ago, in running for president, people with addresses in Washington, D.C. gave more money to the presidential candidates than 32 states combined. You know why? It's the lobbyist and special interest, Tom. You don't write the tax code, they do. And that's what's wrong with this country. The special few run it for their benefit, and they don't mind moving a plant overseas. Hell, all they're interested in is making money. They don't care about Americans who work for a living.
Do you want a flat tax? Do you think a flat tax would work?
It would work. Now, it might not be the best way to do it. I would like to have a tax that's simple, the lowest marginal rates, where savings and investment are as close to tax-free as you could get it. I'd like to have the lowest tax rates in the world so that capital would come to America so they could build their plants here. But I think everybody who makes money ought to pay a little something to be defended by Barksdale Air Force Base and the Marine Corps. I think everybody who loves America and has a profit, like GE, they ought to pay something. I bet GE does everything it can to whip me. Because if I become president, we're going to have a clean, simple, fair tax code, and GE will, for the first time, pay its fair share.